204 here, or better known as Harley Stacy. I'm happy to see all y'all again. If you guys saw my last video, it was about Vivian Bloodcloak, and I said in that video that there were two characters that I always fought between for my favorite character. This next character is that character. Let me introduce you to the one and only Kaladim Sanitram. I am a tiefling, but I am a tiefling artificer. See, Caledon is one of my personal favorite characters. Vivian taught me how to be a self-assertive and self-confident. Caledon taught me to be creative. And here's why. Originally, this is well after Vivian. This is well after I built her and started to develop a real passion for the game. About a year later, I'm not kidding, I am in a Dungeons & Dragons group with a couple of my friends and a couple of my family members. In fact, one of my family members is still in my Wednesday game that I mentioned last week. We, more accurately, I had just lost my character. My DM at the time, he was a real cutthroat. And that's because he played Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. He was used to the rules of being, once your hit points hit 0, you're dead. So if you dropped unconscious in 5th edition, you better hope and pray to God that those saving throws are in your favor, because if not, you're dead. And he will not veto it. He will not let it go. Your character is dead if you fail it. Whew. Pressure. So I decided, okay, if I'm going to be dealing with that, I need to build a character who's ready and willing to get into a fight and willing to play dirty. So I brought Vivian. And then she died. To say I was upset, more accurately, I was upset with myself because I had been disfaithful to the character. I didn't build her properly. And when I did build her, I essentially built her I built her a little weak, if that makes sense. So I was like, okay, that didn't work. Good thing I have a backup character, because what D&D player doesn't have a fucking binder of nothing but backup characters? Actually, this guy, because I only have 2 at a time. The one guy that I'm playing, and the backup in case that guy dies. So it's like, okay, Vivian's dead. I need to bring in a character who's a little bit more overpowered. And I was flipping through the books. I didn't find overpowered, but I found something that was fun. I built Caledon. We were level 7 at the time. I flipped through the books. I found the Artificer in Tasha's Cauldron. Maybe one of these days I'll actually grab my D&D shit and actually pull it out and show you, because it's not back here. Trust me, it's not back here, right? Mythic Odyssey, Candlekeep, Guildmaster's Guide. Yeah, it's not there. I don't know why Tales of the Yawning Portal isn't in my D&D stuff, but alright. So I'm flipping through, and look, the first page, first thing is the Artificer. And it's like, well, I've never played an Artificer. I've always said that I disliked them, because I always thought that they were a little OP. I was like, what the fuck? You know, they get to make a bag of holding at like 2nd level. Are you kidding me? But when I actually sat down and actually read it, it was like, oh, okay, this makes a lot more sense. And then I got to the Armorer Artificer. And this is where my brain started going, I can make something out of this. I can do something with this. And I built it. I built Caledon, and I based him off of Tony Stark. Because I looked at the Armorer archetype and was like, this just makes you Iron Man. I get to don a metal armor that literally can cover my face. Are you kidding? Yeah, no, I want to do that. So I built Cal. And the first thing I asked when I asked the DM if I could build him, I asked if there were guns. Because the Artificer actually has proficiency in firearms. And it's like, really? They get proficiency with firearms. That's something you don't really see in Dungeons & Dragons, really. Not really. You know, you have, like, Critical Role. That I do know. You know, you have, like, Critical Role, where they actually have rules for guns. But other than that, there's not really much in terms of firearms for Dungeons & Dragons. Well, Tasha's Cauldron actually says flat out, okay, here's a gun, here's how it works, here's how much damage it does. It's like, great, awesome. Are there guns in your universe? No. Great. That means I gotta build one. And I took the time, I got the money, I got the resources, I got everything ready, and I built it, and the DM took it away from me. Yeah, I wasn't happy about that, because it took about 10 sessions to get there. Primarily, he took it away from me by saying it exploded when I rolled a 15. So, like I said, cutthroat. And I was like, okay, if that's how we're gonna do this, I'll just move on. So I picked a different group. But I was still wanting to play Cal. You know, the time it took for me to build that gun, I was able to craft so much around him. I was able to make him into this, like, shop peddler who he would inscribe an item. Like, he'd make an auto-fire crossbow, and he would sell it. And after selling it, given, like, 5, 6, 7 days, he would actually go, okay, make another auto crossbow. I'm out of range from them. They don't know that I'm the reason that the spell stopped. Yeah, a little scummy. He was more of like a, you know, he was like a snake oil salesman in that way. He was a very scummy person. He was along the lines of, I'm here to make money. Primarily because he had things he wanted to do with his life, and it required money to do it. You know, he had goals. He wanted to make his fortune, because as a young kid, he always grew up in a town that didn't have any real tieflings. He was actually the only tiefling in the town. His parents were cursed, because if you look at the tiefling in the player's handbook, it says that 9 times out of 10 a tiefling is cursed, or born from an infernal pact, or born just from them, from demons and devils and stuff like that. Well, mine was actually born by humans. My tiefling was actually born to a pair of humans. And because he was the only tiefling around, everyone considered him a curse. He was always considered this, negative thing. Nobody wanted to be around him, except his parents. And his parents always had the mentality of, look, we understand what's going on. When you get older, you need to go out and you need to make your own. You need to go out and make your own. You need to stand above all these people and prove that you are not a curse to society, that you are someone important. And Cal always had that in his mind. He was always thinking to himself, I am important, if to nobody else but to me. So, obviously, that game that I was in originally didn't go so well. So, what do you do? Honestly, I was initially looking for a new group anyway, because I was kind of done with the whole cutthroat mentality. And I actually found a new game. I ended up playing with a new DM, with a new group, and it was actually a lot of fun. The group that we were with was actually really good. Couple new players, a new DM. The new DM was actually one of my better friends that I used to go play F&M with. So, I knew the players. The only people I didn't know was a couple other people, and one of them, knew my brother. So, flat out, I at least knew who I was playing with. So we sat down, and he was like, okay, can you build a character? Because it was the day of, and they were like, if you want to join, can you build a character? And I flat out said, yeah, I can build a character. How fast do you want me to build it? And he was like, well, like 10 minutes. Okay. Threw it together. I grabbed Cal and threw him into a new campaign. So I essentially was playing 2 campaigns at the same time with the same character with different mindsets of how his growth was going. By the way, if anybody ever tells you not to take one of your original characters from a separate campaign to a new one, tell them to screw off. Honestly, because that's no fun. You've grown attached to a character. You may as well play them out. Try to get them to level 20 at least. And for me personally, that's what I do. I don't consider a character done until they hit level 20. You know, Vivian's highest level, 11? That ain't it. She's got 9 levels to go. So if I got to start at level 1 with her again, you bet your butt I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and get to that level. I'm going to try and get to that elusive level 20. And I almost did with this character. So Caledon, was the same. He grew up with this mentality of he was good. He knew what he was doing. He grew up to be a snake sale oilsman. I think that's not the term. I know that's not the term. But that was the idea. You can see my doggy. Hey, buddy. Oh. Hi, bud. Anyway. So, you know the gist. The story was the same. The exact same backstory. And I flat out sat down with him and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get my gun. I'm going to get my character. I'm going to build him how I want. And I actually managed to do it. In fact, my character, during character creation, my DM was like, okay, well, during character creation, I give everybody a set amount of gold. I want you to roll a d100 and then double that. More accurately, I believe what he said is he wants me to roll a d100 and times it by 10. Okay. Picked up the d100. 94. Yeah. He had 94. He had 940 gold to start at like level 4. So I was like, great. Now I need to get more money because that's not nearly enough. A little bit later, DJ asks, or my DM asks, how long has your character been traveling? How long has he been doing this snake oil salesman stuff? Because I started doing it in game, and I was like, oh, he's probably been doing it for about 14 years. He's like 30. He's in his 30s. He's been doing it for like 14 years. He's been doing it since he was a teenager. And the DM was like, then you should have a lot more gold than just 900 on your person. I was like, you're probably right, but do you really want to give me that much gold? And he was like, yeah, I do. I want you to take that D100 and roll it again, and I want you to add times it by 10 again. And I want you to roll it twice. Essentially, because it was 14 years, for every 7 years, you wanted me to roll. I was like, oh, okay. Rolling once, 95. Not bad. So there's 1,000 gold. There's 1890. And then picked up, rolled again. 100. I just got 1,000 gold pieces out of it. I'm not kidding, by the way. This happened in front of 5 people. This happened. I rolled a 100, doubled it into 1,000. It was great. So my character started off with damn near 3 grand in his pocket, and that wasn't counting the sale I was making there, which I sold a bag of holding for about $1,000. Which, you know, a bag of holding is an uncommon item, but when you've got a crowd of people clamoring for it, it's not hard to sell a bag of holding for 1,000 gold. Especially considering you're in one of the more richer districts. So it's like, okay. sold a bag of holding for 1,000 gold. Now I'm sitting in loads of cash. It's like, okay, now I'm going to go and buy some materials. I went to the blacksmith, because normally that's where you can find metal. Went to the blacksmith and asked him, okay, how much scrap metal do you have? He had, I'm not kidding, 12 tons of scrap metal. And he was literally selling it for about 1,000 gold pieces a ton. Scrap metal for 1,000 gold pieces a ton? Not 10,000, 1,000. This is one of those instances where the DM was like throwing me a bone, because I had been, more or less, I was kind of hinting that I was going to build something real big with it. And it was like, yeah, I think that'd be cool. Here, 1,000 gold pieces for a ton of metal. I was like, great, I'm going to buy 2. So I bought 2 tons of metal, and I packed them out. And I set them down. My character's strength wasn't that great. I think it was like a 10. So, of course, he had to have help. Packed it out, and he started smelting it. Because if you know the Artificer, at 3rd level, they get an ability called, they get an ability that basically lets them make any kind of tool that they need. And you can actually buy, like, a portable forge. So it's like, okay, I have a portable forge. I'm going to build whatever tool I need to use it. And I literally just melted down all the metal. And I was thinking to myself, well, I got 2 tons of freaking metal. How am I going to carry all this? And then I had a thought. And this thought kind of broke the game. I asked the DM what it would take to build an iron golem. For those who have played Dungeons & Dragons, they know what an iron golem is. For those that don't, listen up. An iron golem is a creature that has a CR, I believe, of around 14 to 15. It's pretty close to there. High-level character. The creature has an ability that lets it breathe fire from its mouth, so it's a breath weapon, and has a blade that is always considered magical. It's always considered a magical attack. So, they have this blade, right? Make the iron golem. Well, you need a power source. Up to that point, we had actually gone into a bar that was selling this really potent drink that was flat out like, yeah, this is 800 gold a bottle. You take a shot of it, you're going to fucking die if you're not a celestial. It's like, yeah, I'll take it. I'm a tiefling. My DM thought I was crazy. My DM flat out was like, that's the last of your gold. You're going to spend it all on a bottle that could potentially kill you because you're not a celestial. You're a tiefling. You're infernal. And I looked at him and said, I'm aware of this. I have a plan for it. He was like, okay, 800 gold. And gave him 800 gold. I was broke at this point. Took the bottle. And the bottle's about that big. It's like 2 shots. It's like one of them bottles that you'd buy from a liquor store that's got like maybe a shot in it. Maybe 2 if you're lucky. So you take it. So I took it. Built the iron golem. He's like, great, you built the iron golem. How are you going to start it? Boop. I poured this celestial magical drink onto my iron golem. Let me tell you something, folks. In the world of Dungeons & Dragons, one of the best things about it is that you can make shit up on the fly. If it's cool, if it's interesting, if it's something that's really, really intense. This is one of those moments where the rule of cool kind of took over. Typically, with an iron golem, you need to take a lot of magic to try and make an iron golem. You have to get the materials, you have to build it, and then you have to actually take the time to ritual in the power for the iron golem. That's how it works. For my character, there's a bottle. of a magical alcoholic substance that essentially makes you pass out drunk or dead if you are not of a certain race. Already, we can tell that it's magical in nature. What else am I going to do with it? Boop. Right onto the Iron Golem. My DM had me roll a percentage to see if it would work. Picked it up. Boom. One rule that I and this DM had that I didn't know he actually had was the high or low rule. Essentially, you would take your percentiles and you would roll it. And then you would ask a player, or the player that's doing something, high or low. Depending on which they answered was where the percentage sat. So if there's a 25% chance to do something, you can look at a player and go, okay, you have a 25% chance to do it, high or low. If you roll high, you're trying to aim for above 75. You're aiming for above that threshold. If you're aiming for low, you're aiming for 25 and below. That's what you're aiming for. So the DM asks me, high or low? Boom! Low. 15! Whoo! I rolled a 15 on a low check to try and get my animated golem running. Yeah, they got it going. In fact, it got a personality. I made an automaton. This iron golem kind of became like my kid because it actually spoke. It was like, whoa, I made an automaton. Holy shit. I was flipping out at the table. I was like, oh my god, what have I done? What have I done? Because I knew at that moment that the DM was going to start throwing hard encounters at us. He had already thrown some pretty insane encounters at us. But I now had a insane creature to help with the fight. Because, like I said, an iron golem has a blade that's always magical based, has the breath weapon, and is immune to fire. So it's like, okay, we go into a fight with a fire-breathing dragon. I throw the iron golem in front of me and use it as a shield. I am now impervious to fire. And, I built a way to get into the central core of the body. Because believe it or not, the iron golem actually absorbs fire damage. It actually heals it. So I had a spell called Heat Metal. So it was like, oh, okay. He absorbs fire. I'm going to heat metal and heal him. I had a constant way to heal this motherfucker. It was great. So, a couple sessions later, we encounter a fire elemental. But not just any fire elemental. We encounter a fire djinn. For those who do not know, a fire djinn is essentially a genie that is an elemental creature. A fire djinn essentially has this aura around them of the chosen element. So a fire djinn always has fire roaring around them. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to have my iron golems get in his face as I'm taking pot shots. By the way, I got my shotgun. As I'm taking pot shots around the frickin' corner right behind him, just hitting this guy. We managed to actually drop this djinn pretty quick at 5th level. It was insane. No, we were 7th level. Doing the math. We were, 7th level. This is just after I built the damn thing. And, like I said, 2 sessions after. We dropped the fire djinn. And when a djinn dies, there are 1 or 2 things that can happen with a djinn. They can either disperse and appear somewhere else, or a core will actually drop out, like a ruby or a gem, and they will eventually regenerate from it. And this is where I had my second nasty thought. picked up the gem, walked over to my iron golem, opened up its chest piece, and stuck it in there. I swapped out its core with a ruby from a fire gen. Oh. My DM's eyes went wide as saucers, seeing me just go, okay, pick up the gem, I'll walk over. My iron golem from that point forward had this constant fire rating aura around him, which made it great for when we got into combat, because then it was like, okay, he's going to heal off of that. He also got another breath weapon. He got, actually, I was wrong about something with the iron golem, now that I'm thinking about it. I think the iron golem actually had a poison breath, and this core gave him the fire breath. I think. I could be wrong. It was one of the two, but he got another breath weapon from this core. I think it was the fire breath. But that was the fun part about Cal, was that I would come up with this just really off-the-wall idea, like, I'm going to build something out of freaking nowhere and just drop it in your lap and see what you do with it. It kind of became this moment where me, as the player, was dictating to the DM what to do with, because it was like, here's something new, here's something I've built, figure it out. You know, like, I figured out how to build guns. I went to the main kingdom, and I was like, hey, see what I built? You know, I built this. And, like, the kingdom at first was like, well, we're just gonna fucking kill you. And then it was like, oh, you're a crafter, you're a builder. Yeah. You want me to share some of my secrets with you? You know, potentially make us allies, and, you know, we became favorites of the freaking Crownsguard. Didn't help that one of our party members was a freaking, like, the brother of the king. He was, like, the only one not gonna die, which pissed me off. But it was like, yeah, okay, here you go. Here's all my secrets on how to build a freaking firearm. You know, and I did the research on how to actually build one, you know. I actually did the math. It was insane. It was great, though, you know. It was letting that creativity run, because that wasn't the only thing he built. He actually built another thing later on. Actually, it was before he built the Iron Golem. I forgot to mention this. So, he actually tricked out the party's wagon. Or more accurately, you know, the frickin'... yeah, a wagon. You know, it's one of them traveling things that you hop into, and you have horses operating it. Cal didn't exactly do that. Cal was like, no, screw this, I'm not doing this. If we're gonna go in style. And he basically made it into an RV. Like, he made 2 automaton horses that actually would run the thing. And the horses he would constantly oil up. And they would go, I'm not kidding here, they would go 100 miles an hour. Because, yeah. These things were fast. He made it into an RV, basically. It was covered in metal. It had a increase in suspension. Its wheels were literally reinforced with steel. This thing was built to last. Because he was flat out like, no, if we're going to travel in style. And he made it. And because of the fact of how a bag of holding works with items, it keeps them in suspended animation. Right? So what he would do, as long as he had his bag of holding, he would shrink. He would use enhance, or enlarge and reduce. And he would shrink it down to the size of like a toy and put it in a little wooden box. Close the box, and then he would put the box in his bag. Because if you look at that spell, it's not concentration. The spell, enlarge and reduce, actually lasts for an hour. How a bag of holding works is it's another plane of existence entirely, and when you put something in there, it's more or less in suspended animation, unless it's organic. If it's something like a human being or an animal, it's there, but it has no air to breathe. It's literally its own realm. So it works in suspended animation. So I put it in there, first 15 minutes are gone. I still technically have 40 minutes on the spell. So whenever we would get ready to travel, Cal would pull out his box, pull out the little toy, boom, big ass wagon coach, and just hopped on it and was like, okay, I know how to operate it because I made it. So he kind of became the cab driver for the entire party, to which nobody was upset about. Everyone was like, no, we get it. We like it. You know, gets us places. Especially considering one of our party members could teleport at like level 7, and yet when they did it, they only did it by themselves. So it was like, great, now we have to walk. So it was literally along the lines of, well, screw that. If we're going to go in style. Boom. Let's go in our RV, have some fun. You know, it was comfortable, it was nice. I had the whole thing mapped out too, it was great. So that happened. Like I said, Cal's character kind of became this creative nut job. He'd come up with an idea, he would build it, and then the DM would be like, what am I supposed to do with that, you know? What am I supposed to do in response to that? Because one of the funner things that my character would do is he would just build things. He'd just tinker. Eventually it got to the point... Okay. This is the best part of my character, the creativity-wise. My DM ran the Raven Queen differently than a lot of other people. A lot of people run the Raven Queen as this woman who is a lot more forgiving. When it comes to death, you are dead. And she claims your soul. She takes you to the afterlife. It's what she does. But when it comes to other aspects of life, she's a little bit more forgiving. My DM did not run her like that. My DM ran her as a very vengeful, very angry goddess. And that's because in the story, because this is actually the second campaign to a very long-running story, the Raven Queen had essentially been tricked and sired children. Actual children. And one of our players, the one that's the brother to the king, is actually one of the children of the Raven Queen, and is supposed to be destined to fix the issues that happened with her. A lot of what happened was secondhand knowledge to me, so I didn't know any of this. And the Raven Queen came across as very vengeful, very angry. And for me, having played Dungeons & Dragons for a long time, I was kind of perturbed by this. It was like, why is the Raven Queen acting like this? Well, we got into a fight that we couldn't win. An avatar of a rival god that was her, like one of her enemies, came down and summoned a monster that literally one-shot our fighter. We're at level 8. It one-shot him with almost 100 hit points. We get max hit points when we level up. We don't get like a roll. We get max hit points. And this thing one-shot our fighter at the beginning of the fight. This fight, because I didn't know how the DM handled things like this, we were not supposed to win it. We were supposed to lose. And I, as a player, not just as a player, but as a DM, I hate the idea of the no-win scenario. If you are going to throw in an encounter, you should be able to have a way of getting out of it, no matter what. He closed off the door. We couldn't run. We were stuck. This thing one-shot our fighter. He's down. And the lineup is an Artificer with a gun, a Sorcerer, and a Druid. The fighter has the most hit points, and he drops. from 100 hit points in one shot. My character doesn't want to die. Me as a player, I don't underestimate any fight, period. I know that when we enter into a fight, and if it's major, I have to think of everything, every situation, every solution. I have to think of something. And that's because I'm a DM. That's how my brain works. And that's when I finally decided, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This monster is dropping my friends. The Raven Queen's son just dropped. It is at 0 hit points. The Druid, 0 hit points. I'm like the only person standing. Well, a little bit, because I tried getting everybody back up. I get hit once. I get dropped to 1 hit point. I'm at 1 hit point. The rest of the party are low on hit points. We haven't done shit in terms of damage, period. Ticonderoga's not doing anything. He's our fighter. I can't remember the name of the other 2 characters, but we're struggling, and we can't win. We know we can't win. This is a fight we cannot win. So I did something a little desperate. As a player, just in general, you know that when you call out a god, you're essentially killing your character. Because gods are not nice. Gods are vengeful, they are devilish, they're rude. They will kill you if they have the opportunity. As a player, you know this. As a character, it doesn't matter. If the god can get you somewhere, the god's going to get you somewhere. And this is what I did on my turn. I looked at the DM. I looked at the players, and I asked them, how often does the Raven Queen answer when someone calls out to her? And they all kind of were like, well, she listens. But it depends on what you say. That gets her attention. So I'm at 1 hit point. Bonus action, I drink a potion. Greater healing potion. I get like 20 hit points back. I'm at 21. I'm like, okay. My character doesn't see any other way out of this. He doesn't know if this is like a dream or whatever. But this is fucked. And he's done. And he stands up. And he shouts out to the ether, hey, Raven bitch! Your son's dying and we're cleaning up your shit! Get your ass down here so we can get this shit solved! And the table went silent. The table went silent. Cal, up to that point, had always been calm, cool, and collected. Never once had he yelled, shouted, or screamed. Never once did he call anybody anything other than a person. The first time he ever showed himself to have a rude bone in his body was when he called out a goddess. And that goddess was not happy. Oh no, she was not happy. She, on hearing this, rips a hole through my stomach and comes out. I'm at 1 hit point again. Bleeding. The DM flat out tells me, because you are at 1 hit point, you are bleeding out, you will die at the end of your turn. This is your one opportunity to plead your case to the Raven Queen. I looked at her and I told her flat out, this is your fucking problem. He's the champion of your enemy and you're making us take care of it? And she goes, well, my son is dealing with it. And I looked at her and said, your son is incompetent and can't do his job. To which she agreed. And she flat out looked at me and said, okay, if I deal with this, if I handle this, you're mine. You become my champion. I will brand you as such at a time of my choosing. And I flat out, in the middle of her talking, flat out flipped up my shirt, brandished my arm, and slapped it and said, brand me now. Let's get this shit over with. Sure shit, she did. She branded my arm. I lost my last hit point. I went unconscious. The Raven Queen then proceeded to heal my party. Healed me from the brink of death, because I was essentially at, if we're talking in-game, I had 2 failed saving throws, essentially, at the time. Because of the fact that I was bleeding out, I was going to take damage. And essentially the DM was like, okay, the Raven Queen brings you back from the brink of death, because she just made you your champion. She doesn't want you dead yet. Brought him up. There he stands. And then, like I said, this was before he made the Iron Golem. And she slayed them. She killed them. She brutally killed them. Because in this world, a god can't really do anything unless I guess you could say a sacrifice is made. It's equivalent exchange. For those who know Full Metal Alchemist, it's equivalent exchange. They cannot do something without something being given first. So, the fact that I literally told her flat out, I am willing to become your champion if you kill these motherfuckers. I will devote my life to you if you slay these people. Yeah, seems like a pretty good deal to me. You know, she saw the shit that I made up to that point. It's like, yeah, okay, this guy may actually be worth something. Plus, he called me out, and then to my face interrupted me without hesitation. He's got my attention. And don't get me wrong, I did not make the Raven Queen do shit. There was no roll. There was nothing to do with it. There was no persuasion checks. There was nothing. Because of the fact that I had stood up at the table, brandished my arm, and slapped it. I slapped it hard enough that the people outside of the room could hear it. I had left a hand mark the size of my hand on my arm for 2 weeks because of how hard I slapped it. There was no roll. No persuasion check, no nothing. The DM gave it to me. And then, about 4 weeks later, Cal essentially gets into an argument with the entire party. More accurately, he gets into an argument with one of them. And up to that point, he was getting pretty fed up with their shit. And me as a player, I was loving it. I was having a blast. But it's like, as a character, there's a point when your character stops giving a shit and starts shooting people in the face. I flat out was like, okay, he's going to call the Raven Queen. He's ready to do his job. And at first, I thought this meant that my character was going to start getting side quests along with the main quest with the party. No. What happened was the Raven Queen essentially came down and abducted me and my Iron Golem. Ooh. And that's the end of the story of Kaladim Sanitram. Yeah. Never played him after that. Primarily because I don't really want him. I think that was a really good way of ending his story, because he was at, like, level 12. That's a really good way of ending his story, you know. He essentially became a god after that, because once he got done working for the Raven Queen, he started getting a following as this massive creator. You know, the Iron Golem was slowly started to become like his symbol. Like, people started to worship him because of the shit he'd make. You know, obviously he would get enemies from other artificers who were like, we've been doing this before. Why is he getting special treatment? But my character, he actually started becoming the god of crafting. You know, he became a god of metalwork. He became a god at level 12. And for me, that's a good place to stop it. That's a good place for his character to kind of be like, okay, I'm ready to retire now. I'm ready to go. So I've never played an Artificer since. I'd probably do it, but I won't play Cal. I won't play him just because I feel like that was a really good way to send him off. The only way, and I do mean this, the only way I would play Kaladim Sanitram again is if I was doing it live. If I was playing a live D&D game, yeah, I'd probably bring Cal back. Just because I would love to see what people's reactions to this guy would be. Because his character, honestly, I love Cal. I love his mannerisms. I love the way he acts. I love his creativity. It's the reason why him and Vivian are at the top for me. It's because they mean something. And that's the best thing about a character for D&D. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up, guys. It's been 46 minutes. I don't exactly want to keep guys any longer than I have to. I hope you guys had a wonderful day. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Of course, have a wonderful day.